Hello there, Qckslvrslash here, and today I have a video courtesy of Flyinggomba driving the Tier 8 American battleship, the North Carolina, and for once I can say this with pride, I promise you, Goomba does not explode in this video, despite what past evidence may suggest is a trend for him in videos I feature. And he's driving one of my favorite ships early on. The first line I rushed up was the American battleship line, mostly to get to the Iowa class. I absolutely love the USS Missouri. I've been on it. It was one of those ships that just put me in awe of the size and scale that warships used to be. You know, driving on a frigate for the better part of probably 5 years myself, you know, you get on the ship and you're like, this thing's pretty big, but they pale in comparison to the size of something like a battleship. So I went straight up this line, and the North Carolina is probably the first time I fell in love with the American battleships. I mean, there are bright spots here and there, but unlike a lot of people, I didn't really enjoy the New Mexico. I know many who do. Personally, didn't really like the ship. I actually enjoyed the Colorado a little bit more and couldn't understand why so many people were hating on it. And that's until later I went down the Japanese line and realized the Nagato kind of tier for tier, spec for spec is a little bit better of a ship, with one exception being the AA. And the AA and secondary is definitely something that the North Carolina carries forward from the Colorado. If you've got advanced basics of fire training and advanced fire training on this thing, you have a really good AA rating, and Goomba proves it right there. 2 planes shot down basically what was remaining in that squadron really in no time. And I do find that, particularly against lower tier aircraft carriers, so like a tier 7 aircraft carrier, you don't even really have to think about their planes. And even equal tier aren't as scary as they used to be in some battleships. Now that of course all starts to change when you see tier 10s, like, but that's a different story. And there's AA goes again. One little burst, another plane down. Goomba did focus in on that enemy North Carolina a little bit, trying to get the shots off, and that is a really good shot. About 13,000 damage to the enemy North Carolina. Unfortunately, he ran aground, so not everything's perfect, but you take what you can get, and no one's shooting at him. He's not really in the risk of getting wrecked, and all it means is he's got more shots at this enemy North Carolina. One of the other things I really started to enjoy about the North Carolina particularly was the armor. You could go bow in, and she was a tank. You know, you give a side, you're going to get Citadel, that's fine. But you could go bow in, 6 guns facing forward, you could really do some damage to things. Particularly Amagis, because they really have to give you a good chunk of their side to be able to fire all their guns, otherwise they're just firing 4 barrels forward. But as far as starts to a battle go, this one hasn't been too exciting. Neither team's really committed to much. We're almost 5 minutes in, everyone's still alive, none of the capture points are taken, and I'm finding this more and more in ships, and I think I like it. It shows a little less desperation out of players to be the hero, and more thoughtful play normally leads to better games. A decent chunk of damage he just got to that Fiji, looked like 7,000 between all the shells, which you definitely hope for more hitting those British cruisers, because they have a habit, at least when you're driving them, of just taking massive amounts of damage when they get hit. But we're going to see Goomba really kick off the damage run on this one in just a little while. His team has almost managed to capture C, which it'll be the only point. At least that was true until friendly cruiser just got hit, and that Leander is more likely dead. Wouldn't surprise me if that destroyer gets him. He's got a good side shot at the Cleveland here. You gotta hope that you're gonna get damage with a shot like that. The shells look to be in nearly the perfect spot. Maybe a little bit high for the Citadel, but he only gets one penetrating hit out of all of that. And those are always letdowns when you do get cruisers side on like that. But he's still racking up solid damage, even gets the rear gun into it, and just look at his AA blast away, supporting those friendly fighters. And it's just another reason I love this ship. I also do like what Goomba's doing here. You can see the enemy team's got 2 battleships and a cruiser way down at A, and they're not really super focused to the south of C here, so he's finally going in. He's not as concerned. There's only 1 destroyer on the enemy team, and he's going to start to try to take advantage of it. I think he was watching the planes a little too much here, but he hasn't been shot at, so he probably didn't really have a reason to look anywhere else. And maybe he's trying to figure out what he wants to do plan-wise. But he does finally make his mind up here. Picks the York to bully. All 3 barrels. Fires. And, you know what? These shells are looking good. And he nukes the York. 2 Citadels and a devastating strike. Single volleyed. Basically a full health tier 7 cruiser. And you know that York player's gonna be salty. And he's got another perfect target right away. He turned clear of the island. Here's a New Mexico. He aims pretty much in the perfect spot, I'd say. Just a little above waterline, so the shells go into that kind of second deck. And that's exactly where you want to hit. He gets a Citadel, 2 penetrating hits, massive damage in. And then he sees some torpedoes, probably from that Fiji, I'm guessing. I don't know what else was spotted down there. But manages to duck them, and he's keeping his guns firing at targets that are side on. That's what you gotta do. Aims at the Scharnhorst, puts the volley out, and he's almost at 100,000 damage. If these connect, he'll definitely be over that. And boy, do they connect. 4 penetrating hits, 5 overpens. Gets his Confederate, and he's up to 121,000 damage. 2 kills. This game is going really well for him. He assisted in the cap, and he's really the reason his team is pushing forward. You can see no one on his team is further forward than he is. They're kind of all meandering just about the same place he is, and almost letting him lead the charge. And it's working out fine. You don't like to see that. If there were more destroyers on the enemy team, this would be a really bad play by his team, because those cruisers are what protect you from destroyers. But enemy destroyers last spotted at B, clearly probably still in there. So what's he got to lose? Rushing in, getting some great damage on the board. Hopefully he's corrected his aim on this Colorado here, but he doesn't have time to watch those shells because he's taking some fire from smoke, which can only mean one thing with that much AP, and that's British cruiser. And I will note, watch the damage on him. And I believe it was the Fiji that was spotted. Yeah, it would be the Fiji. So tier 7. And isn't really managing any damage. And I think a big part of that is, you look where the Fiji's hitting him. They're kind of off-centered, ricocheting down the hull. And it's perfect angling, and that's how you really avoid eating a lot of damage. That little chunk there being the first set he's taken from that Fiji. He just keeps his bow in. He knows he's not going to get hit too hard, even with that high rate of fire. And the Fiji smoke only lasts so long. And you gotta hope a shot right here is just gonna wreck him. The shells are looking pretty good, and boy do they connect. He manages to get his third turret around, but friendly finishes the Fiji off before those shells arrive. And that would have been another kill, but you know what? 152,000 damage on the board, and he's really been the spearhead for his team, pushing through on this game. And I don't want to say this one's all wrapped up, but this one is pretty much at the point where it's already all wrapped up. The enemy team isn't even close on points. They don't have a lead in caps, so they're not going to start catching up. They're all accounted for. Their DD is dead, and their aircraft carrier's probably going to be gone in a quick second here. Side on to pretty much all of Goomba's fleet. And that's just a great way to die in an aircraft carrier. See if he manages any good citadels. No massive hits, but still 7,000 damage out of those 2 penetrating hits. Another 5,000 with this other volley. And it's just a dead carrier. I don't know why the carrier was where it was. You see so many carriers just hanging out near islands because they think it's safe. CV players have to move, and the good ones, you know, you'd expect a better CV player to be somewhere over here by now with his fleet between him and the enemy.
Enemy aircraft carrier blown up.
But Goomba does manage to get the kill on that carrier, and he still has decent shots at this Colorado. And that's definitely one place that the North Carolina destroys the Colorado, and it's the North Carolina's the first American ship. You don't feel you have to put the range mod in. Up until that point, it's basically a must because the Americans just don't have the gun range to duel. But by the North Carolina, you know, big, sleek, fast battleship, and she's got some range. Landing a couple more shells out at the 20k mark, and if he reloads quick enough, it wouldn't surprise me if he finishes this Colorado off as well. But obviously, friendlies want it, and it always sucks when the guy dies and a half second later your shells go. You don't even have the time to react and pull your hand off the trigger. That said, this game is more or less done. You can see an Emerald bravely charging between a couple tier 8 ships. And man, do I feel sorry for that Emerald. It doesn't do well against equal tier ships. I can't imagine it doing well against an Otago in North Carolina. It does, however, get off a number of torpedoes straight into the back of that North Carolina. So well done from a tier 5 ship in a tier 8 game. Who dragged him in? Leander, okay. Never the happiest place to be, and you always play a risk when you bring unequal tier ships. And they just got unlucky there, but didn't affect the battle. And you know what? With those torps into the North Carolina, probably did a heck of a lot more than a lot of the players on the enemy team. And luckily, Goomba's gonna get a really good shot at this North Carolina as he comes around that headland. If he ever aims. There we go. Picks North Carolina, full volley, and you gotta get your rudder over right away, start getting his armor angled in. Shells bounce right off him as he gets another 6,000 or 7,000 damage in, pretty much. Well, no, he didn't really finish him off, but good solid damage and sealed any chance they had at coming back. As long as you've got a top-tier battleship, you've always got that opportunity, particularly if ships come at you one at a time. But at this point, this one's over. You can see the Otago is slowed right up, so those shells are going to be long. And I've been asked a couple times, like, people want to have the full overlay in replays so you can see how you're aiming. It's unfortunate you can't. I'm hoping at some point that gets added. But the biggest part of accurately aiming at a ship is really just accounting for their speed. If you can kind of figure out what speed a ship is going, you can get them. And boy, what a final result. 453,000 credits, 9,900 experience, Confederate, devastating strike, high caliber, 186,000 damage, all those sits, that acing of the York, and when you come look at where he was on his team, no surprise, top of the team, 2,600 experience, or nearly that. And that was just a really well played game, even if it started out slow. And I think, if anything, it just stresses that patience can really win games, and just let the game happen. Don't try to force any moves. Anyways, if you guys enjoyed this, considering giving me a thumbs up or subscribing to the channel, both keep me motivated. If you'd like your videos featured on this, a reminder that I welcome anyone to send me their replays at Qckslvrslash@gmail.com. And just send me the replay file, ideally 1 or 2 of the post-battle screens, and I'll try to get it up on the channel. As always, I'm Qckslvrslash, and I'll have another one for you guys tomorrow.